I don't know about y'all, but I love film photography. I've also never really done film photography. Before you guys come at me with pitchforks, just hear me out. I currently shoot on a Canon R5, which is the camera I'm recording this on right now. Now, I love my R5, and I still think to this day it's one of the best mirrorless cameras you can get. But I've always really wanted to get into film photography. In fact, I just got this Kodak Ektar H35N film camera. I think it's a really great, like, super entry-level film camera. It's half frame, which means that you basically get double the exposures out of a roll of film, and film is expensive, so that's a plus. I think it's a really great way for someone like me to kind of dip their toes into film photography without, you know, knowing a ton about it or having a bunch of money to dump into it or anything like that. But for now, I'm gonna set this to the side. There's been a few reasons for me personally that I've been very hesitant to even get into film photography. For starters, film is expensive. Like, I had no clue how expensive some film could cost. I do a lot of portrait work and also a ton of event shooting, so if I was to shoot an event on a film camera where I'm typically delivering a high volume of photos, that could get very expensive very quick. It's just really not feasible for me to buy the amount of film that I would need to shoot something like what I would normally shoot on my R5. And even beyond that, like, it's just a whole different world, film versus digital photography. So as I get into the film photography journey, what I've really wanted to do lately is kind of try getting that film type of look on my digital photos. And that's where Dehancer comes in. Dehancer Film is a plugin for both Lightroom and Photoshop that allows you to get the film look on your digital photos. There's a bunch of different profiles, and you've got controls for things like grain and bloom and halation and things like that, so that you can really play around with it and start to get that super film style look on your digital photos. So I'm not gonna go through like how to set it up and install it and stuff like that. There's already videos like that out there. I'll link one in the description. I'm just gonna kind of jump right in and start playing around with photos that I've already taken and see what kind of look I can get out of it. So these are some photos from a shoot that I did recently with a friend of mine named Michaela, and I already kind of went through and edited most of these. So what I'm going to do is create a virtual copy and then just erase the develop settings and more or less start from scratch with the raw and then bring it into Dehancer and then play around with it there. So once you have Dehancer installed and set up, what you're going to want to do is right click, go over to edit in, and then click edit in Dehancer Lightroom plugin. And then I usually just click, I leave this stuff how it is, and then I click edit, and then what that'll do is that'll pull up the Dehancer Lightroom plugin, and here we are. So we've got the photo from Lightroom, and what I'm going to start with is the different film profiles. So first, what you have to do is enable them. So basically when you click them, you'll see now it's applying that film preset, and then you kind of can just go through and see which ones you like, at least as a starting point. So what I'm actually going to do is, since I just got this Kodak Ektar H35N film camera, I'm going to play around with some of the film. And actually the film that I bought for that camera was the Kodak Ektar 100. So what I think that's really cool about this actually is that this can kind of also give you a really good idea of what different film types will look like. Because if there's one thing I've learned from using this plugin a little bit, it's that there are a lot of different types of film and they all give you a different look and they do different things. So this is actually very helpful for me right now because I can kind of get a better idea of what some of my Kodak Ektar H35N photos will look like with the Ektar 100 film. So that's what I'm gonna start with. I'm gonna start with the Kodak Ektar 100 film profile to begin with. So something I want to add before I really dive into this is that, like, again, I really don't know a ton about film photography, and so a lot of these things, like, I'm not super familiar with necessarily the ways that they would affect a photo or how it should or shouldn't be. I'm not super worried about like the technicals of this right now. I honestly just want to get in here and play around with it and do, you know, take advantage of the different things that it offers until it looks a way that I just like. Like for me, at least, when I think about film photography, it's about a look. It's not about the technicals. I'm not too worried about, is it properly exposed and are the shadows good or the highlights good? I'm really not worried about that. Like for me, film photography is more about how it looks and how does it make me feel when I'm looking at it. So I'm gonna play around with a lot of this stuff, but just know I am by no means an expert, and I'm just really doing this to have fun and to kind of get a little bit of an insight into film photography for someone who really isn't very familiar with it. Anyway, okay, let me go to, I'm gonna start with a little bit of exposure compensation because I feel like that was a little underexposed for my liking, so I think that's good right there. The next thing I'm going to come down to is the film compression. So I have it checked right now. I'm going to uncheck it so you can see, if you kind of look at the background, you can see what it does, like especially to the bridge back here when the film compression is on or off. I like having it on. And again, to be completely honest with you, I don't even really know what like film compression means from a technical standpoint. But one of the reasons I love this plugin so much is that I really don't necessarily have to, and I have the space to kind of learn more about it, but I can immediately just dive right in and start to do things that are giving me that film look with Dehancer without even knowing much about it. So I feel like it's just a really nice way to kind of also, you know, see these things and play with these things as I start to learn more about it. So anyway, yeah, film compression, check. I'm gonna leave it like that. Film grain, absolutely. So also a lot of this stuff was already checked. So I'm gonna just kind of go ahead and uncheck some of these things real quick because I was already editing in here before. So I just unchecked a lot of that stuff. So this is just with the Kodak Ektar 100 film profile on and a little bit of film compression. So the next thing I want to definitely add is some grain, because to me, like when I think about film, I think grain, you know. And the thing is, with beautiful digital cameras like we have today and these great mirrorless cameras, a lot of them are super sharp, and I love that. But the beauty of film is that it's often a lot softer. There's often a lot more grain. A lot of times film cameras are really not shooting like wide open at like a 1.8 or a 2.8 or something like that. Like even this camera right here, the Ektar H35N, the aperture is like an f8. So it's not all about just blowing out the background and things like that. So yeah, film grain. I had it on the 35mm ISO 200 or 250. Let's just see like what 8mm ISO 50 looks like. And we can see, if we zoom in a little bit more, how some of these, you can kind of tell how they change a little bit. You know what, I don't know, for me, I'm just like 35mm film, and again, trying to get as close as possible to what I'll actually be shooting on with this camera down here. So I'm just gonna keep it at 35mm ISO 50 film grain. Next, I'm gonna add some halation. So you can see right away when I check or uncheck the halation box, it gives kind of like a red glow, especially right around her, which I actually don't really like. I don't want to do that necessarily for this photo. So instead what I'm going to do is just click and maybe change it. Right now I've got it on 8mm Super 8. So let's see if we did like 35mm Super 35. Yeah, okay, see that I like a lot more. And you can kind of see when I check and uncheck it again, you see it's a lot more subtle. Like you can really see it, especially around her bracelet and around the strap of her shirt. What else? Let's play with some more. Let's go with the 65mm. That's like kind of like for me. 16mm. Actually, I like this. Okay, I'm gonna keep it on the 16mm Super 16 for the halation. So next, let's go ahead and add some bloom. So you'll notice when you add bloom, now this, especially for like the highlights, like you'll see like kind of like the edges of her body, her hair and things like that, where there's obviously like, you know, it was the skies in the background, the water's in the background, so there's a lot of highlights here. So I kind of just, you know, it takes care of a lot of that. It also has an effect like on her skin and stuff. I really like the bloom. Actually, I'm curious if I did bloom and no halation. Yeah, you know what? I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just this photo, but I actually don't want to do the halation. I want to stick with just the bloom. And let's see, let's try the 35 again. Yeah, you know what? Nah, I'm really digging the 8mm Super 8. So we're gonna go with the 8mm Super 8 for the bloom. And then this is probably my favorite part of this, and maybe I'm just like overdoing it and going overboard with it, but something I've always loved when I look back at like old film photos of like my family and things like that, I've always loved when they're damaged, like when they have like scratches on them, or maybe there's like a burn mark, or there was like an error in the printing or something like that. So they actually have, right in Dehancer, they have a film damage like plugin. So I love that. So basically what it's going to do when I check this is it's going to add some of those like streaks and that damage to the film, which in my opinion, like to me, that's one of the things that makes it look the most like a film photo out of all of these different aspects. So let's go ahead and check that. So I already had it set to 35mm full frame, but what I'm going to do instead is switch to the half frame to kind of see and get a little bit of an idea of maybe what it would look like if I had some film damage off of this camera right here. And that's what you get. Now, I actually personally don't like this a ton because I just feel like there's a lot of damage right around like her face and stuff. But the nice thing is, if you just click this refresh button, it'll essentially give you a whole new set of film damage. And if you just keep clicking it, it'll keep changing it. So this, I like this a lot more because it's more spread out. it's not as prominent around just the center of the photo. So I actually like this a lot more, so I think I'm gonna stick with that. And then last but definitely not least, out of all the things that you can do in here, is some vignettes. So if I go ahead and check this vignette box, you can start to see right around the edges of the photo where the vignette kind of kicks in. And again, just like all these other different sliders and stuff, you can kind of just play around with it and get it to where you like. And again, like obviously all these things do something different. Like this is the exposure of the vignette, this is the size, this is the feather of it, and those things all mean something. I know what a lot of that stuff means, but like I said, for me, when I think about film photography and the way that I want my image to look if it were to be shot on film, is I'm not super worried about a lot of that stuff. I like to know that I can tweak that stuff and get certain things exactly where I need. But as far as the way that I go about it, I'm kind of just playing around with sliders until I like something. And I think that's the beauty of photography, is that like we can just shoot something and shoot it in a way, or edit it in a way, or play around with it in a way that we just like. It doesn't always have to be perfect, doesn't always have to be exact. It just has to be something I like. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna keep playing around until it is something that I like. Now I actually, one of the other things is, when it comes to film, I think I'm a little bit more of a fan of overexposing and making things look a little blown out, if anything, rather than like a little too dark. So I kind of boosted the exposure on the vignette a little bit. And yeah, so basically just with editing those couple of things right there, we already went from what we had before to this right here. So basically, if I uncheck this preview box, it'll show me the original photo versus the edit. So this is the original. So this is the photo that I brought in, which is basically just the raw. I boosted the exposure just a little bit, but this is pretty much just the raw photo. And then with everything I've added to it, this is the difference. This is the look I can get out of it. Is it actually film photography? Obviously not. Only film photography can be film. But I think it's really crazy that with this plugin, you can get something like this to look this close to it without it actually being filmed. Like being able to take photos taken on a mirrorless camera and make them look like this. So once you're all set and then you've got something you like, you just have to click OK. And then it'll basically just create an extra TIFF file in Lightroom with the edit that I just did. So that's what this is right here. So again, if I go from before, so this is actually basically the 3 different photos I have here, which is essentially the raw with, again, just boosting the exposure a little bit. This is the edit that I did on it before when I originally did the shoot. And then this is the edit, the film look edit that I did in Dehancer Pro. I'm really happy with this. Like, I think it's just so much fun to play around with. I've already spent some time with it even before recording this video. And with the amount of different film profiles and the amount of control that you have over some of these settings, like you really can kind of go crazy with it and get all different sorts of looks. So I'm gonna go ahead and edit one more photo for you guys real quick for this video. So same thing, I kind of just more or less took the raw, boosted the exposure just a little bit, and we're gonna go back through the same process. So all you gotta do is right click, click edit in, and then edit in Dehancer Lightroom plugin. And then like I said before, when this window pops up, I just personally leave it as it is, leave it as a TIFF file for when it goes back into Lightroom. So here we go, we got the photo back into Dehancer. I'm gonna enable the film profiles again, and this time I'm gonna pick a different one. So the beauty of this plugin is there are so many different film profiles and film looks, and I think that's really where the fun comes in. I mean, you can go crazy between all the different film profiles and then all the settings that you have control over. You can really create a ton of different looks, and you can get something that looks exactly like one of these film profiles. You can get something that looks similar to it but with your own tweaks, and you can get something that's completely like custom and original basically. So this time around, instead of going with the Kodak Eterna 100 or Ektar 100, I'm gonna go with one of the Fujifilm looks. So I'm gonna start with the Fujifilm Eterna Vivid, and that right away, I like that a lot, like with and without, with and without. I like that. Let's see. Ooh, I kind of really like the Riala. There's just so many. It's almost a little overwhelming because there are so many things to pick from. But for the sake of this video and not going on for too long, even though I already have been, I'm just gonna stick with the Riala for this edit around. So boom, we got our photo. We've got the Fuji Riala 500D film profile look, and I'm gonna go ahead and start tweaking with some of this stuff. The exposure compensation, again, me personally, I'm just a fan when it comes to this type of stuff of overexposing a little bit, making it look a little, you know, blown out almost. I didn't do this last time, but the film developer, so if you click that, you can kind of see, you can get like a contrast boost, which is actually nice. But again, like, I don't know, I like I like taking away that contrast. I kind of almost, it's almost like that like light and airy look, but with film. So you know what, I'm gonna do that this time. I'm gonna do the film developer and decrease the contrast. Let's see, what about the colors if I do the color boost? Yeah, you know what, like I said, I want, like, I don't know, something about it. I want this to look like a film photo that was taken a while ago, and it's already started to fade, and it's got the damage and all that stuff. So we're gonna make it look like that. So I decreased the color boost a little bit. I turned down the contrast boost a little bit. Next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna add that film compression again. And like I said, if you look, you can see where kind of around the edges of the trees, the edges of her, where it starts to kind of compress it a little bit. And then, you know what, let's play around with the impact. So let's lower that so you can kind of see what it does if you lower or raise it. I'm actually going to lower it a little bit more. And I'm just going to leave that like that is. And then once again, I'm going to add some more film grain. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so you can kind of see where the grain is. And I didn't do this before, but if we clicked custom, you can actually completely customize the film grain, which is also really dope. So like if I was to just completely max out the size, the amount, like that's crazy. That's so much grain. But I am gonna make it a lot bigger than it was before, and I'll do a decent amount. I want this photo to be a little grainier. The shadows, so adding some more grain to the shadows, adding more grain to the midtones. I'm just kind of going a little crazy with the grain right now, to be honest with you, because like I said, for right now, for this edit, I want this to look like a film photo that's also been sitting around for a while and has experienced a lot of that loss and a lot of that like damage and stuff. So boom, we've got our film grain. Let's zoom back out here. That's good to go. So like I said, we can do what I love as a lot of these plugins are, which is where you can do like the before and after, or you can just turn it on and off. So this is without the grain, this is with the grain. So liking that so far. Let's keep the grain and let that rock. Next up, the halation again. So if I do that, and so this time I actually do like the halation, because what you immediately notice is where it is around the train track itself, and it immediately adds that to it. So I like that a lot. Let's maybe play around. Let's try the Super 35 one. No, you know what, actually I'm gonna go back. I kind of like that Super 8 one. There's a ton of halation, as you can see, especially like the red around the train tracks, but I don't know, for some reason I'm just really digging that right now, so I'm gonna stick with that. We'll add some more bloom again. Ooh, you know what, actually I feel like that's a little too much, more than I would want. So okay, I'm liking that 65-70 millimeter. I think that feels a lot better. So this is without it, this is with it. I like that. That looks good to me. Now to my favorite tool out of all this, the film damage. So check that again, and boom, now you can start to see some more of that damage. This is the 35 millimeter half frame. I did not try the 120 type yet, so let's see what that looks like. Not much. No, it's not enough damage for me. I need to be damaged. We need to be damaged. So we're gonna go back to the 35 millimeter half frame, which looks like that, and then the full frame. So I'm gonna stick with the half frame, I think, and I'm just gonna kind of cycle through until I find a set of damage that I like, which, not that one. Too much in the middle again. I love this if it didn't have the one mark across her face, so I'm gonna switch it one more time. 2 more times. Okay, I like this. I feel like this is it. I like this. This is the damage profile, if you will, that we're gonna go with. And then last but not least, we've already got the vignette on. Actually, it was checked from last time, so let's turn it off. So that's with it off. I don't know. I kind of, maybe I want it off this time. Nah, we're gonna keep it on. Let's see if we were to boost. Yeah, see, I feel like, should I boost it or drop it? I'm gonna boost it a little bit. Let's boost that vignette a little bit. It's obviously super heavy up here in this right corner where it's already kind of blown out from the sky anyway. You know what? Actually, one last thing. I'm gonna decrease the exposure just a little bit to get it a little bit better. I think this is really good right here. So let's do our preview box. So this is before the edit, and this is after. This is also, you can come back and check like without the film profile and just the edits. See, so that's the thing with just the edits, it's a totally different thing. Like even with no film profile, you can still completely get something really cool out of it. I'm gonna add the film profile back because I already started with it and then made the edits after to get that look. So I'm gonna stick with that, and boom, to me, like this feels like a film photo that's kind of been sitting around for a little while, something that was meant to be a film photo. One last thing that I wanted to mention is that you can actually save a set of edits as a preset. So you can see down here, I already saved one from an edit I did like a few days ago. You can just go back to the original of what it was, or you can just switch back to the film profile, check your film profile, and then select the one that you want or the one that you already had on or whatever the case is. So I think that's a really cool feature that you can just save a preset, you know, just like you would in Lightroom already anyway. So if you have a certain edit or a certain style that you get and really like it and you want to apply it to some other photos, you just save it as a preset, check it, and then you're good to go. So overall, how do I feel about Dehancer film? Honestly, so far, I'm loving it. I think it's got a lot of functionality. There's a lot of tools. I think it's one of those things where it's got a good balance of having a lot to offer, but also not being overwhelming or just kind of like oversaturated or anything like that. But it's also not, you know, bare bones where it just doesn't have enough to offer. So I think it has a good balance in that regard. I think that the user interface of it is actually really easy to follow. I've done a lot of, you know, I've worked on a lot of different programs and plugins where the interface can be really difficult. In the, you know, a little bit of time that I've been using this before recording this video and now, it seems to function super well. Everything seems very straightforward. I think the only thing, if anything, that I would love to see in the interface here is if maybe some of these different effects like halation and bloom, is if there had like a little eye icon where you can get some more information on it. In all fairness, if you go on the website, you can actually see in detail what each thing does, which I love. I think it's really great that they tell you what these different functions do, because again, for somebody like me who doesn't know a ton about film, even though I know a lot about digital photography, I think it's just really great to have that information there so that not only do you get the visual of seeing what you do when you add that effect, but it also actually explains to you what it's doing. So I think that's really great. Again, I think it would be a little helpful if maybe you could just kind of get some of that information right from within the interface, or even if it would like link you to their website where they're giving you more of that information, but that's just me being nitpicky. I think this is the perfect type of program, not only for somebody like me who's trying to kind of dip their toes into film photography and get that film look on their digital photos, but also just somebody who already does film photography and maybe they have a digital camera and they want to start to get some of that look on their digital photos, or anybody in between. I think that this just has a lot to offer for a lot of different people, and I'm honestly really excited to go back and re-edit some of the photos I've already done and do more of these film effects and kind of see how it looks and just kind of play around and figure out like which film profiles I like the most, what I like the most out of the effects and how they work more, and just kind of playing around with a lot more and getting a better understanding. I think it seems like it doesn't have too difficult of a learning curve. I feel like once I get more time in it and I start to see the things that I actually like and figure out what to me is actually appealing, then I'll probably have an even better time than I already am. One last thing I wanted to mention is that there's actually a new iOS app for Dehancer. It allows you to do a ton of the same things for the Dehancer desktop app, but right on your iPhone or iPad. So it functions more or less the same way. You can load a photo or video in, and then from there you can select all of your different film types. You can do edits such as adding film grain, playing around with halation and bloom, all that same stuff that we just did on the computer that you can do right off of your phone, so that you can take your photos from looking like this to looking like this. If you guys want to hear more about the iOS app, let me know in the comments and maybe I can make a full video review on Dehancer for iOS. I had a ton of fun making this video. I'm definitely looking forward to like diving into it more and just kind of playing around more with all the different film looks. And if it's something that you're interested in, head on over to dehancer.com and you can actually use my code DEVIN10 for 10% off, and I'll put the link in the description. But that's about it for now. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace.